Everyone, and welcome back to another episode of Paris Talks Marketing. Today, my guest is Ido Weisenberg. Ido is the CEO of Voyantis, and he's here to tell us all about the exciting world of predicting LTV. Ido, why don't you start us off by just telling us about who you are and what you do?
Hey, nice to meet you. I'm Ido Weisenberg. I'm 44 years old soon, based out of Tel Aviv. I have 3 kids and an amazing wife. And I'm the co-founder and CEO of Voyant. And maybe a bit about my background. So this is actually my 3rd company. I started my career in a company which was more a project-based company, like an agency called Frido. And then we turned it into a startup. We call this Tivinci. This was, in a sense, a white label Netflix. So we used to work with big companies like Vodafone and others and provide them for them all of the infrastructure to what we call today over-the-top TV. Today, we are one of the biggest players there. We sold this company, it was 11 years ago, to a publicly listed company called Kaltura. And then I stayed there for a few years. And I started the journey at Voyantis, in effect, 6.5 years ago by dating and looking for the right co-founder. And we can talk about it. And actually founded the company 4.5 years ago. And we just announced a big raise of $41 million, our B round. And maybe just to share what we do at Voyantis. So we help companies, those can be both SaaS companies and consumer companies, to focus on the right user, the right customers at the right time. And we leverage AI and machine learning first to predict who will be a good user. And then we help them, A, to acquire those customers, B, to activate them, 3, to upsell in the right moment, and 4, to make sure we have the retention. And obviously, I'll talk about it in the next few minutes.
Great. Excellent. Congratulations on the round. Let's talk about that for a second. And you mentioned the co-founder. I want to start with that, actually. Why was it important for you to get a co-founder when you started up?
Because I believe that, we want to build something big, something massive. It probably will take a chunk of our life, right? Many years. And you want to do it with someone that you respect, even when we are getting married, usually it's not after 1 or 2 dates. It takes some time because your intention is to have as many years as possible with your partner. And I think it's the same here. If you look at the number one reason for failure of startup, it would be some problems between the founders. And it was very, very important for me to find someone that A, I respect, B, share the same value as me, also in a similar stage in life like me. So also Eran, my co-founder, just sold the company. We have similar age, same amount of kids even, same ages. And the most important thing, I think we shared the same values and wanted to have the company in a certain DNA that we believe in. And on the other side, we complement each other. I'm coming from the business part, and Eran is coming from the tech and product side.
Okay. Yeah, that last point is very important. I think having a partner who complements your skill sets and rounds out your skill sets, that's great. And congratulations on the raise. And I think that's a real sign that the market is really moving in this direction. Just to be clear, you're helping companies initially to identify the right customers based on lifetime value, not just simply how much they may spend on their first purchase or right up front. How do you actually do that? What sort of data are you capturing and how are you using that to make that kind of a prediction?
Perfect. So maybe we can start with taking an example of one of, I believe, the best SaaS companies out there, Miro from the Netherlands, right? So I assume most of the audience know Miro. It's a PLG company with an enterprise motion on top of it. What's the challenge of a company like Miro that is scaling like hell, right? That in most cases, the journey starts with a freemium or free trial, right? Anyone now can get to the Miro website, open an account and open a board and start to work and collaborate with customer. There are certain things that you can do forever free. Some of them will cost money. And eventually you will move hopefully into a paying subscription and then start to add more and more users and get more features. So someone who starts free can become a huge customer eventually. But it takes time. It can take a few weeks, a few months until actually someone would actually start to pay, and even more time until you realize the full potential of this user, right? You can also have multiple users from the same company. How do you deal with it? So this is the problem, right? Or the pain is that you need to acquire customers, but you don't know if those are good or bad customer. And usually in PLG companies, there is a very low rate between sign up to actual paying customer. So if 100 users actually signed up, usually in most PLG companies, only a few of them will become a paying customer, and maybe only a few of them will become high value customers eventually. Now, company like Miro, like many other SaaS PLG companies, rely on paid media to bring and acquire new customers. So it can be Google, Meta, and so on. If you think about the way that, let's take Google, for example, they design their ad platform, they know all of us, they know our intent and so on. And their platform is becoming smarter and smarter with their AI. You'll have less campaign and everything will be automated, except of two things. One is creative. You need to all the time have different creative. The second, where we come into play, is what they call signals. Okay, they are telling you, "Hey, Mister Advertise, hey Miro, tell us who is a good user for you. On every user that click on an ad, you should tell us if it's good or bad, and we will bring the next good user." And this is like an ongoing process all the time. So far, seems easy. What's the challenge? The challenge is that they are telling you, you should tell us in the first day, the first few hours, up until day 7, who is a good user. For PLG SaaS companies, almost none of those companies know in the first 7 days if this is a good user. Some would still be in a 7-day trial, so it takes more. Some would be in a freemium. And in general, in many places, it will take them until you add more and more users to the account. So you want to rely on Google to acquire better customer, and you need to tell them who is a good user in the first 7 days, ideally in day 1. So most of the PLG SaaS companies will use either leads or sign up or corporate sign up or something that happened in the first few days in the product as a leading indicator. So let's take a numeric example. This week, 1,000 user clicked on the Miro ad. Okay, out of those 1,000, let's assume that 100 actually open an account with a non-Gmail account. Before working with Voyantis, a company like Miro will tell Google, those all users are great users, bring me more of them. So we have 100 equal users. Google knows everything about them, and they will bring more of those 100, and this will happen on an hourly basis all the time. However, in reality, and I can get obviously to Miro numbers, but in general, in PLG, let's assume that only 20 of those 100 users will pay after, I don't know, in the next 90 days. So 80 users are not good users, although we told Google that those are good users. And this is where Voyantis come into play. We will use prediction. In a second, I'll get to how do we do the prediction. We'll use the prediction, send it to Google, actually provide a different value for each of those 100 users. So in effect, we will rank those 100 users based on the likelihood for them to becoming paying customers or based on their LTV. And then we'll pass it to Google, and there is lots of law how to pass it. We can also touch upon this. And eventually we'll educate the machine learning of Google with our machine learning about who is a good customer. And here is a win-win-win. Google knows who is a better customer. For users who will have a high likelihood to become a paying customer and good customer, they will automatically bid higher. And for paid users, you will pay less. And then the results are much better. So we are getting paid. Google are seeing, usually you'll see a 30 or even 40% uplift. So if you spend $1 million per month, Voyantis with Google will generate for you $300K more. It means that probably you'll spend even more in Google. So customer is happy, Voyantis is happy, and Google are happy, the same with Meta and others. But this is basically the value we provide for the acquisition. This. Now, you ask about how do we do it? Like what's behind the scene? Yeah. Most companies today, if you think about PLG SaaS companies, they have a data lake, right? This can be Snowflake, BigQuery, Redshift. They have an analytics platform like Amplitude and Google Analytics. They have attribution platform and so on. They sit on a goldmine of data. There is tons of data because, let's take again the use case before. You clicked on an ad. We know which device you are coming from. We know what time of the day. We know what type of resolution a specific device you have. Now you start to browse. We have lots of interaction. What's the session time? Where did you click? Did you answer some questions? Sometimes there is a quiz. Then you got an email, push notification, you got back, you added a friend, you open a board. Thousands of different points. All of them rely per each user in your data lake. However, most companies don't really do a lot with this because it's hard. What we do, we have connector, let's assume it's Snowflake to your Snowflake. It's very easy to bring us the data no need a real engineer on your side. We remove, or usually you even remove all of the PII. So it's PII free, only anonymized data. So there is no problem with GDPR and so on. And then we take historical data. Let's assume we take 12 months of historical data. Now we already know historical who is a good customer. We will train the machine learning using our platform to understand out of all of those features, what's the combination that makes you a special user. And for each user, there will be a different truth. Once we have this prediction, we then will be able to predict per each new user based on their behavior already in the first few minutes what would be their LTV or what's the likelihood for them to become a good customer. And then every hour, we'll run the prediction again. Why? Because if you're coming or even not coming to the website, if you respond to an email and so on, it means something about you. So as time passes by, we will be more accurate. And this is the first part of our solution. This is the prediction engine that predicts per each individual user from the very first moment the future value or likely to do any action, and send this to your BI. So the first step in your BI now, for each user, you know what would be the value of the user. The second step, if I'm connecting now to Google, if we start with the acquisition use case, is that we, on your behalf, send this prediction to Google or Meta through the server API. And after a few years of interaction with Google, it's basically a black box. How do we work with a black box? So we did hundreds of experiments to understand, for example, when is the right time to send a prediction. If I'm doing a prediction every hour, maybe for a certain user, after 24 hours, I will be very accurate. For someone else, maybe after 2 hours, and for someone else, after 3 days. So per each user, we need to decide when to send the prediction, what value to send. We call it orchestration layer, which decide how to work with the Google Meta black box and send the prediction at the right time to the right user with the right value. And then we are running an A/B test, and you actually see the uplift. And afterwards, you move gradually, all of your paid media to work with our signal, which is a superior signal that is telling Google Meta who is a good customer for you.
I have a question there on the timing, because I think that's very interesting. What have you found on average? I know that each customer probably is a little bit different, but what have you found overall about when is the ideal time to make the prediction? Because if the longer you wait, the more behavioral data you can bring into the equation. But in our experience, the longer we wait, the weaker Google's algorithm is at being able to give you more of those customers. So what is the sweet spot? Clearly, you can do it instantly based on just firmographic data, but then you have no behavioral data. Or you can wait 7 days, 14 days, 30 days, and get tons of behavioral data in the product, which probably strengthens the prediction greatly. But then you have that gap. So what's the sweet spot in terms of when is the best time to make the prediction and then send the PLTV?
The first step is, let's understand how Google designed their platform, right? So from what we know, it's not public information, but what we gather, that there are different algorithms within the ad bidding that Google built. Actually, different teams are working on each different algorithm. So you can think about an algorithm of the first few hours, an algorithm for the first day, for the second day, for 7 days, and so on. We did a few experiments sending the same signal after 1 hour, 1 day, after 7 days. Usually after 7 days, you don't want to send it anymore, although you can theoretically. The results of 1 hour will be always better than after 1 day, than after 7 days. So in general, the rule of thumb, yes, send it as soon as possible. But then come the accuracy of the model, as you mentioned, right? Theoretically, in some platform, you can send prediction every hour. You can even correct the prediction if it was high value to low value. In reality, although the API allowed it, from our experience, it's not really working. So we do send multiple signals, not only one, but the first signal is important, and correcting the signal to the low end is also something that is ideally you don't want to do. So we'll run the prediction. If the accuracy is very, very high, we'll probably send it from the beginning, but we'll also try to predict what's the likelihood to have a downgrade in the prediction, because if the prediction would be even higher, then it could be somehow okay. But if it's lower, it's not so good. So per each user, there will be an orchestration layer to decide what time to send the first signal, knowing that it's better to send it early on. On the other side, understand that the penalty of sending the wrong value or high value to a low user, the penalty is even higher than sending it before. So it's quite complex. And I think the only way to do it is just to experiment a lot, and based on this, understand when is the right time to send.
Yeah. I want to get into the notion of accuracy because I think that's very interesting in the context of predictive analytics. You're predicting future LTV at this moment in the present. So how does is the accuracy a score that the model generates and it says I have 95% confidence that this user is a, I don't know, $500,000 LTV?
There are different ways to look at accuracy. It's also depending whether we predict LTV or we predict intent, like will the user do something, or like what's the percentage. High level, we use what they call MAPE. And this is the way we look at it. When we train, we don't train the model on all of the data. So we have some data outside that later on we can actually see. In most cases, we will be in more than 90% accuracy based on MAPE. So it's very high. But we also realize that this is not enough, okay? It's really depending what use case you are using. For example, if the use case would be send it to your BI, and based on this, I will do budget adjustment between different channels, this is one thing. If the idea is that we want to send it to Google, as I mentioned before, then sometimes, I'll give you an example, you might have a whale, okay? That will be huge customer. You might have 99% accuracy. You know this is going to be a whale. Sending this to Google, if you have only one whale, is not so good because it will change the mindset of Google, right? So this can be counterintuitive. So what do? You need to reduce a bit the value. How much you reduce? This is the question, right? I would say that accuracy is important step to build trust between us and the customer, but we are not being measured by accuracy. We are selling ROI. We are being measured. We are a SaaS company, obviously, but we are being measured by how much uplift we can provide you in terms of results. So if you spend $1 million per month, can you generate 200K more using Voyantis? And eventually, this is what you care about. And maybe I'll give you an anecdote about starting Voyantis. So we didn't understand why no one is doing what we do, right? Because it's not something new. The concept of PLTV is something old and so on, but still most companies didn't do it. And we interview about 100 different founders and CMOs and chief growth officers. And the biggest thing that we learn is that predicting the future seems in the beginning a big headache, but eventually they want to change the future. And changing the future is the hard part because they told us, okay, so we know this user would be $500, this user will be $200. What do we do with it? And Voyantis is all about what do we do with it? So the prediction is a very important part of what we do, but we don't stop at the prediction. Most of our focus is what we call prescriptive AI that actually provide the right prescription for acquisition, for activation, for retention, for upsell. And we believe this is what makes us unique. And this is the reason that we want to measure ourselves by ROI and not just based on accuracy.
And mostly are the customers that you're selling to, are they mostly marketing CMOs? Are they CROs? Because in my experience, these people have different incentives. Marketing, say a CMO may just really want to acquire the maximum number of leads to be able to show if that's their KPI. Whereas chief revenue officer wants to fill the pipeline. They want the enterprise leads. They don't care about volume. And sometimes these incentives are not really aligned. But how do you navigate through these kind of big company politics when your buyer might be a CMO who just cares about lead and volume?
Oftentimes, there is a new position of chief growth officer, right? And in a sense, chief growth officer look at the balance between the two. But it's really depending on a case by case. Sometimes the CRO is actually the chief growth. So it's like different names to something which eventually has the same capability of bringing the right customer. And I agree with you that there is a tense between like volume of leads, sign up, and revenues and qualified ones. I think it is what we see first in the market, regardless of Voyantis, that more and more there is an alignment from like CEO that guys, no matter, you are not getting your bonus based only on your sign up. You are getting your bonus based on the OKRs of the company, which is actual revenues and so on. So I think that one way to solve this, regardless of Voyantis, is measure both the CRO and the CMO on something which is like the real KPI of the company, basically what the CEO is being measured by the board. Okay. But specifically to your point, one of the biggest challenges that we have is we need to change the mindset of the marketing folks from looking at CAC to looking at CAC to LTV, right? So if in theory, we come to a customer and all of their marketing department is being measured by what's my cost per sign up. And as long as they meet the cost, this is amazing. They will get the bonuses. They will get promoted. Obviously, this is not what we are here to achieve. Working with Voyantis, maybe the sign up will be even a bit more expensive. But if out of them we'll have more customers, this is what counts for the board, for the CEO, for the investors, right? So in a sense, we not only selling platform or software, we are helping companies to do this shift, which is not an easy shift, of a mindset for measuring CAC, or like cost per sign up, cost per first purchase, to measuring CAC to LTV, which is the ultimate goal that obviously you look at it at cohorts, or your finance will look at cohort, but not per user, right? And moving from looking at cohort to looking at user, it's a big thing because in a cohort of 1,000 paying customers, maybe the average would be the same, but usually if you go one by one, there will be high difference between them. In order to work with Google and Meta, you must go to the user level. So we try, or we will not sign with you a deal, okay, if we know that you are going to measure our success by CAC to sign up. You can look at CAC to good customer or CAC to paying customer. This is good, but we will need to work with you. So usually it's a baby step. So usually the first step, if you are still measuring yourself by CAC to account creation, CAC to sign up, it will say, okay, let's cover 20% of the budget and measure the success of this based on, call it ROAS, like what's the return on ad spend after 30 days, 90 days, or what's my CAC for paying customer, or CAC for you, or customer will do 2 transactions. So first, we want to make sure that if we are doing a pilot with you, you are measure this pilot with the right KPIs and you are not getting punished with your OKRs. Once it's working, our goal will be to help you become the hero in front of the CFO, the CEO, even the board, and adopt those metrics that today, like most of our customers are using predictive signals even in the quarterly board meeting. Because if you think about it a better way, they will be much more accurate in what they're saying to their board, mainly when you are a PLG and you have so many users. So it's not like it's websites.
I was going to bring this up because I think that this is one of the strongest arguments for a SaaS company that may be still in startup mode. They're raising money. They have to tell this story to the investors, or the current investors and the future rounds, that this is how we are creating value. And this is how we justify the value of our startup. We have now an acquisition engine that can predict LTV at the time of acquisition. And we're acquiring against that on a 3-to-1, LTV to CAC ratio. And we're just starting, but we think we can scale it 50 times greater. If you tell that story to an investor, I think that investor is writing the check if they believe it, because you're pretty much saying we have a growth engine that we're sure it can create value. And we know that every dollar we put in, we get $3 back in LTV. And it's very, very scalable, but we just need the cash. Now, the other part of this, though, just to take the counter argument, is in some cases, the LTV could happen over the course of years out into the future. And some companies could say, well, I do get the fact that I'm creating future value here, but I have a cash flow situation. And I really just can't put more cash into this because what I need to do is invest in customers that are giving me the highest initial first-time purchase so that we can show revenue growth today, this quarter. And I don't want to sacrifice this quarter's financial results for something that is LTV that's achieved maybe 3 years, 5 years out. How do you overcome that objection, which is people that are just very, very focused on the short term and this quarter's financial results?
I would say specifically for SaaS companies, right? We also work with consumer companies, but SaaS companies, it's very rarely to see companies that will recoup the full investment in the first purchase that will happen in the first few days, okay? So in general, with SaaS companies, you will lose money on your users you just acquire in the first few days, first few weeks, first few months, right?
Yeah.
One thing, we talk about LTV. In most cases, customers ask us to predict something in the next foreseeable future. 1 month, 3 months, 6 months. Why? Because usually there are some good leading indicator after a few months of who would be a good user. 2, it's easier for them to actually not only believe the prediction, but actually see this materialize, okay? So in most cases, there is a journey to move your company into prediction. Eventually, I believe the reason we started the company, that all of the companies in the world will use a machine like Voyantis to operate. This would be the growth operating system, right? Of the new growth operating system of any company out there. It would seem weird for us in a few years to look at the actual values and not the predicted values, because, I mean, what does it mean, actual values, right? So this is my dream. I believe the market will get there, okay? But as I mentioned before, those would be baby steps. So we would recommend you as a customer to start. Let's give an example, right? Your goal is to bring better LTV, better customers, but maybe the first step with Voyantis or without Voyantis, with you internally in the first few months, let's predict even if they will buy, okay? Because even if they will buy, I don't know. So if my rate from sign up to first purchase is 5%, okay? Just bringing better buyers would be good. Once I'm there, after a few months, after a year, and the organization can look at a prediction for intent, then I can go to who will be higher value after 3 months, after 6 months. So I think it's a gradual thing that will get
Yeah.
there. Now, one more comment to your point before, which I agree that having such a machine will hopefully help you to raise more money, because the most important thing for investors in the public market and VCs is predictability, right? I think the best, if you look at the best companies out there, those are companies that are very predictable and the market can understand where they go and then actually make it, right? From what I know, Microsoft,
Yeah.
for example, all of their revenue projections are being fed for machine learning that they actually develop in-house, which is amazing, right? So this is something like having a predictable company is something that will help you increase your valuation. Last point, there are different ways to get money, right? For example, we work very closely with a fund of General Catalyst that help you and fund money for marketing and sales purpose. So they will actually buy from you the quote of January and you'll need to repay it only for an interest, right? Which is a great way to grow without burning lots of money. And they introduce us to many customers and we introduce them to many customers, because if you think about it, when we work with a customer, they have more confidence that they can actually grow in a good way. And actually, if they buy a core, this would be a good core. And for us, if we work with a customer and they come, they have more money to spend, so we can help them scale.
That makes perfect sense, because an investor with that mindset who can supply capital is a key piece of this equation. I think what it really boils down to is the concept of delayed gratification, really, which is something that it's a kind of psychological term as well. If you have the discipline to delay gratification, meaning that you're going to probably accept less revenue today from the first purchase of the first month or first quarter's revenue for the sake of getting a better long-term customer, then long-term you're adding more value to that company. And if you can demonstrate that, then you have an investor who also is really in full agreement with that, who's ready to supply capital.
Agree. One of the things that we provide you is like a dimmer. You can decide. Let's assume you spend $1 million per month. 200K would be on the high value customers, like maybe with less higher CAC. But another 500K, I want to bring on users who will convert in the first month. Because regardless, most of the SaaS companies don't know in the first 7 days who is a good customer, even if they will pay, right? So if you think about it, we are helping you with everything beyond the first 7 days. And then based on your quarterly targets, we can shift a bit more for a long term, a bit, some of them for paying customers in the first months and so on. So you can play with it on a daily basis even.
Yeah. That's good to give them a few options to have a gradual transition. Let's pivot over to your business model itself. Since you're able to really demonstrate value creation, and you said you're a SaaS, do you have some sort of value-based pricing model, or do you take a percentage of the incremental value that you create as part of your fee?
We are a SaaS company, so we don't take percentage of it. But if you think about it, we want to make sure that you keep quite a healthy ROI on top of Voyantis, okay? So the way we structure our business model, it's a SaaS business model. You sign in advance for a long-term deal, but in the beginning, you'll have a few months, depending on the case, of a reduced license fee. So you will pay because we will not work for free, but you will pay a reduced license fee. And during this time, we will need to prove the ROI. And if we don't prove the ROI, you are not continuing. So basically, it's something that helps you build confidence with us, because you know that if we don't provide the ROI, we are also losing money. If you think about our CAC to LTV, we will start to be profitable once you get into the full license fee. So we are fully aligned.
Mhm.
You put some money off the table so we know you're serious about it, right? And we are seeing an amazing conversion between the reduced license fee to full license fee. And then customers feel very confident to work with us because they see the ROI. So we are 3, 4, 5, sometimes 10x ROI positive on the value that we create for you on a monthly basis.
Yeah. Ultimately, the ROI calculation needs to take into account the ad spend plus whatever they're spending on your fees, your
Correct.
licensing fees, plus maybe an agency fee. I want to be clear on this point too. You all are not a marketing agency. You don't run the campaigns, do you?
We do not run the campaigns. We do help you during the initial reduced license fee to move to, usually we help customers to move to what we call value-based bidding or TOS, meaning instead of doing TCPA, instead of just sending to Google, is this good or bad user, to provide a value per user. And this is a change that we know we need to help customers to do. But in general, you'll have a CSM, you'll have a weekly with him, you can review the results, he will help you, but we are not touching your day-to-day. We are not helping with creative. It's not what we do. And we are not an agency. We are a 100% tech provider.
Do you work with agencies or are most of the clients that you have in-house
So
marketing team?
We do work with customers. We do work with some great agencies. I would say when you come with when you work with an agency, I think today smart agencies, their business model is also based on the actual success, right? If your agency is being compensated by bringing more sign up, then working with Voyantis can build like we won't be aligned. But we believe that most of the agencies today are being measured by the ultimate goal of revenue and not just by a proxy like a cost per sign up.
Yeah. I think still the most common agency pricing model is a percentage of ad
Yes.
spend. It's kind of a quasi performance based model because the agency wants you to spend more, but they have to demonstrate that there's real value to get the client to invest more ad
Correct.
dollars. And percentage of ad spend is kind of a win-win for both. But I think your component is really key here in that ecosystem because you're providing the mechanism for convincing companies that they should invest more because the ROI is clear.
Correct.
Yeah. Let's talk about how you are doing marketing for yourselves. And are you acquiring your own leads and customers through some sort of account-based marketing, or can you walk me through how you are doing marketing at this moment?
Yes, we are an enterprise B2B SaaS. Our price point is in the 6 digits per year, so it's not a cheap solution. And by the way, we grew 3x like 2 years in a row, and pipeline looks very good also for this year. So the company is in a good trajectory so far. We are doing ABM. We understood that given that we usually talk with VP or C level, like VP growth or VP marketing or CRO sometimes even the CFO is involved, it's hard to get in front of them, right? They got bombarded with so many different messages. So we are less about like BDR that will approach them. We are more into private. We are doing lots of dinners, like almost every week or 2 weeks, we'll have a dinner in a different location in the world with our folks. We are not, by the way, pitching too much Voyantis. It's basically a place for growth and marketing people to talk with each other and build a network. So we are doing lots of those things. We build a network of people who knows us and recommend us for customers, VCs that recommend us for their portfolio companies because there is a full alignment. Obviously, we have our sales people that build their own pipeline. We work very closely with Google and Meta and AppsFlyer, for example, because it's again a win-win. All of them enjoy when you spend more money, and we are a great enabler for this. So Google has a program to move advertisers to value-based bidding. We are a partner of Google to help them because it's easier to move to value-based bidding or TROAS with a company like Voyantis. So it's a combination, I would say, of partners and field events. In regards to different tools that we use, we love Clay. I think it's an amazing, amazing company. And it's really helped you actually to build your list and people. And you have so many parameters of what's important for us, what's qualified for us. So we use it quite intensively.
Yeah, Clay is really hot and we've used it too. And I think that's really interesting how the approach that you're taking to start those relationships. Roughly how many salespeople do you have today at Voyantis?
We have about 4, 5 salespeople. So relatively very efficient sales motion. And as you mentioned, we believe in long-term relationships. So every quarter, we will win deals that started like as a relationship a year ago or 2 years ago, that now is the right time because for different companies, our usual sales cycle is relatively small, less than 6 months, okay? For an enterprise B2B 6 digits company, but we keep seeing that relationship counts. because each company has a different curve. When is the right time for them to move to prediction, to move to value-based bidding? And we want to be there. And most of our competition would be in-house, right? Whether they want to do it in-house, and we explain them how hard it is, because it's build a prediction, which I believe is even the easier part. Then is maintaining the prediction, having the MLOps. What happens if the prediction is not working, right? Do you have fallback models? Do you know it? Every day of a mistake cost you tens of thousands of dollars if your spend is high, right? So the cost of mistake is very high. And then you have the actual optimization, like the mechanism, how to work with the black box. It will take you many months or many years to understand it. Also, the cost of media to run those experiments. So we believe that in our market, doing it in-house will not be a trend, as it's just a beginning of the market. Still, people are trying. We're actually seeing now a trend of in-house moving into Voyantis, because they say, okay, we realize it's good. However, although you're not cheap, your solution is much cheaper than doing it with a 4 or 5 team people that this is what they're doing. And we have so much more things for our data science and engineering team to do. And oftentimes the marketing teams, they have a friction. They want R&D, they want product, but they have other things to do. So it's very hard for them to get those resources. So Voyantis, in a sense, is a solution, because we get access to the gold of their data, anonymized data. And then with Voyantis, they can do whatever they want, and we are much more available to them. So it's also good to have the balance that R&D will focus on the product, and the marketing team can still use the data in a way that's not a heavy lifting for team.
That's a really interesting point too. And it's something from our own experience as well, is that even these companies that have data scientists who are capable of building machine learning models for predicting LTV, their focus is not on marketing. Their focus is on product or business intelligence, other aspects of the business. And marketing can't really get those resources. The in-house data scientists are not really accessible to them. So I think in a way, you're kind of an outsourced data scientist team for marketing, which helps marketing achieve their goals, I suppose. Do you sometimes struggle with just getting the data flowing at the beginning of a project? Because sometimes maybe they don't have, well, most people do now have a warehouse, either BigQuery, Snowflake, or otherwise, but all the data wrangling to first identify where does the data live and get it into the right kind of formats to run a machine learning prediction. Is that sometimes a struggle? Do you have a big upfront kind of phase that you have to go through in order to get?
The answer is sometimes yes. It's becoming better and better as time passes by. So today, the process is much easier. We build connectors to various of different data lakes. But as part of our qualification, if any customer is telling us, yeah, but my data is a mess, right? I never, with a customer that told me, my data is amazing, just come and use it. Okay, so part of the sales process, we need to educate them that we just need to get your raw data. We'll take it from there, right? And this is something that sometimes take time. We usually bring the data team to be part of those discussion, right? So they will feel connected to what we want to do. That this will be part of what they are proud of. But as you rightly said, sometimes it takes more time than expected. Sometimes there are some obstacles. You need to pass security. Obviously, we take non-data, but there is a challenge. However, if you want to predict the future, just putting a JavaScript or SDK, you need just then to wait time until you gather the data. So we also have this solution, but we prefer in most cases to gather historical data, because then we can start to work right away together.
Yeah. And do a lot of the customers that you start with, do they already know their historical LTV, or do you have to also build out the LTV, like a cohort model for historical LTV before you can build a predictive model?
So as part of our onboarding team, we have a very strong professional services team that understand data very well. Oftentimes, we see there is no 100% correlation between what they told us in the sales process and what's the actual results.
Oh, really? That's a shock.
And I think they appreciate it. I think that they appreciate the service they get from us. Oftentimes, they will circulate our presentation internally with different nuggets of information. So in a sense, it's not what we are doing, but we are an extension sometimes also of the BI, because this is what we do for a living, right? It's not that we are super smart. It's just this is what we do. We have lots of references of what's good look like, of methodology of companies, right? We have many, for example, SaaS PLG companies. We have also many fintech and other tech companies. And I think that coming with this know-how sometimes help to shed the light on specific things that are not so easy. So looking at the overall LTV probably would be okay, but looking at segments, right? Because the truth is, I mean, looking at high core doesn't really help you. You want to start to segment your users into different things and learn. And this is where it's becoming a bit harder. Also, by the way, in our prediction, we call it one prediction. It's a flurry of 1,000+ prediction usually, because it's a prediction per hour and then prediction per segment, per different geo, different time of day, male or women. So there are so many things out there, and it's quite complex.
Yeah.
And I think that customers appreciate that this is, our passion, this is what we love to do, and we help them to be even more sharp with the data that they have.
Yeah. I've got one more kind of technical question here before we wrap up. That's about cookies, third-party cookies. For many years, Google was telling the market that they were going to deprecate third-party cookies, and they were kicking the can down the road for years. And that was actually leading to this big conversation around first-party data, and companies were going to need to replace the loss of the third-party data signals with their own first-party data. And I'm sure that also provided a strong sales argument for companies like yours. But then Google came out at the end of last year and said, well, you know what? We're not deprecating third-party cookies. Nobody's really forcing us to do this. They're too useful anyway. We have too much of Google's revenue, I think, is really driven by third-party signals. I think it's how they deliver a lot of their ROAS. Were you forced to pivot or to tell a different story based on Google's 180-degree turn away from their commitment to deprecating third-party cookies?
The answer is no. So first, in order to build the prediction, it's the same data. It's your data. Nothing relates to the third-party cookie. With regards to the cookies itself, the biggest question that we have when it comes to sending signals is identifier. We want to make sure that when a user clicks on an ad, we can provide the value for this user. Again, everything is anonymized. So the biggest question is what will happen with the Google Click ID or different ways, like in order to send this prediction to the right user. And here, I believe there will be different changes in the near future. But Google, their main business is advertising. They want to help their advertiser to send the correct value to the correct user. So there are different workarounds that we are now implementing. So we are not afraid from it at all. And in fact, it wasn't a big change. The deprecation and non-deprecation of cookies didn't provide any material change to our business.
That's great. Yeah, I thought that was a really interesting development from Google. Either they couldn't figure out how to replace the third-party cookie, or it was more political and they figured that they weren't under as much pressure anymore as they thought for privacy reasons. Maybe it was both, actually. They tried the privacy sandbox and a bunch of other different models. And no real surprise. I don't think anything still can replace a cookie that just follows you around on your browser and knows everything about where you go, what you do, what you click. So we're still stuck with third-party cookies. It's good for Google. I think it's good for advertisers. It may not be great for user privacy, but I think the political sands are shifting. And more, I believe consumers are willing to sacrifice some degree of the data privacy for the great services that come with it from Google and from others.
Absolutely agree.
Great. This has been fantastic. Was there anything that I didn't ask you that you wished I would have asked you, or is there anything else that you feel could benefit our listeners?
I think your question was spot on. I would just say in general, I believe that even if it sounds a bit frightening to go to predictions and rely on AI, this is the future. And I think that you cannot escape from it. And I think that companies who will adopt this early on will have an advantage against the others. And I really think that each company should think about how we can have better means to understand today what will happen in the future and how actually we can influence the future based on this.
Yeah, that's right. It's all about delayed gratification in the end. And if people are willing to do that, there's maybe sacrificing today for a brighter future. But when you can predict the future, I think this is what everybody wants. So, well, thank you very much. Ido, where can our listeners find you?
Ido at Voyantis.ai. It's my email, Ido Weisenberg at LinkedIn. Feel free. I'd love to talk with anyone. And thanks again for the opportunity.
I have one last question that I just remembered I wanted to ask at the very beginning. What does the name Voyantis mean?
There is no word Voyantis, but it's like a paraphrase of clairvoyant, of someone actually seeing the future. So we wanted to have like a word, an inspiration word about like a company that actually help you foresee the future.
Wonderful. I was thinking about a voyage, but I had it wrong. I think the clairvoyance Now I get it. That's great. Very cool. All right, Ido, thank you very much. And for those listening, check out Voyantis. They are predicting the future and helping you to spend the right money today, build a better future for your company. So thanks very
Thank
much.
you.
Keep in
Thanks.
touch.
Bye bye.